Now, if you don't remember who Alan Grayson is, I already kind of introed him, but he's the guy who told the GOP guy to put a bag over his head if he didn't think carbon was a problem. But he also he's most famous for the healthcare debate. During the healthcare debate, he said the GOP plan is for if you get sick for you to die quickly. And that was accurate at the time, very accurate, because when we were trying to pass healthcare, they had nothing. And then when Obama was president, all they did was obstruct. They just, tried to block everything and make him. Mitch McConnell said himself, he's like, we're going to make this guy a one-term president. He failed, but hey, they tried. They tried their best. And at the end of the day, they got everything Republicans could possibly dream of from Obama under the guise of intellectualism and identity politics and all that great stuff. But this guy, Alan Grayson, was Matt Gaetz before there was Matt Gaetz, also from Florida, ironically. Or maybe not. Maybe Florida just produces this kind of testosterone. But let's watch this first clip of Grayson on Chris Hayes. And let me see, what year was this? I think this one is like 2010. It may have the date on it. It doesn't.
Republicans have in mind for you, America, that's the Republicans' health care plan. But I think that the Republicans understand that that plan isn't always going to work. It's not a foolproof plan. So the Republicans have a backup plan in case you do get sick. If you get sick in America, this is what the Republicans want you to do. If you get sick, America, the Republican health care plan is this. Die quickly. That's right. The Republicans want you to die quickly if you get sick.
That was Congressman Alan Grayson, who was best known during his first term in Congress for his blistering but cable news-friendly attacks on his political opponents. That didn't go over too well in his home district, where he was unseated by a Republican challenger after one term by 18 points. Thanks to redistricting, Grayson was...
So Chris just answered my question. This is when he got reelected in the later 2010s. I think it's like 2012 when Obama was
able to run in a much more Democratic district outside Orlando in 2012, and he won, sending him back to Congress for a second try. In a fascinating new profile, Slate's Dave Weigel pronounced Grayson the most effective member of the House.
Good old Dave Weigel.
What emerges is the picture of a former firebrand who's making his mark as a quiet, forceful, and incredibly effective legislator. Since returning to Congress, Grayson has launched dozens of under-the-radar campaigns to win over his Republican colleagues. Grayson gets their support on amendments to pieces of legislation that accomplish small but concrete progressive goals. He's already passed 31 amendments in committee this year. In one instance, Grayson attached a ban on funding for unmanned aerial vehicles, also known as drones, to the Homeland Security bill. This is the kind of thing.
Look at how old that is. It's like that ban never made it.
thing he's getting Republican votes on. Right now, Grayson is working the chamber, trying to win support for an amendment that would restrict NSA surveillance. He says he only needs 4 more Republicans. It's all pretty impressive.
Restrict NSA surveillance. Oh, if only Grayson could see us now.
In the do-nothing Congress, the lawmaker who is actually doing something is the last guy you'd expect. Joining me now is Congressman Alan Grayson, Democrat from Florida. And you're chuckling at the last guy you expect, I imagine, because you think you would expect that you would do something. But Congressman, my question to you is, this really does see an Alan Grayson 2.0, that you learn things from your first term in Congress and that you are taking a different approach. Am I misreading it? Are you just the same guy? Is the approach the same, or did you really learn something from that first go-around?
Well, remember that the only bipartisan accomplishment of substance in the 111th Congress during my first term was when I joined with Republican Ron Paul to pass a bill to audit the Federal Reserve, something that had not been done independently for 100 years. He lined up the Republicans, I lined up the Democrats. I picked up a bill that had languished for 26 years, not even gotten the committee hearing, and we got it passed. So this is a winning formula.
So you've been going through bills, looking at actually what comes out of the majority, looking at amendments that have passed before but have died along the way, and going and talking to your Republican colleagues. I want to play an interview with you did with Rachel Maddow in 2009 about the Republicans. Take a listen.
The Republicans have nothing. They simply stick their heels in, they dig their heels in, they won't let anything get done time and time again. It's not just the health bill, it's everything.
This is why he was so hated, as you can tell.
They simply block everything. That's not what America sent Congress to do.
But he sounds a lot like Matt Gaetz, doesn't he?
More or less my understanding of the current Republican majority. Do I have it wrong?
Well, the fact is that we're able to win just by picking off 18 of them. And what we do is we frame things that they find very difficult to say no to. Now, they don't always look at it the same way that we do. For instance,
This is kind of brilliant. This is something that progressives today could learn
I introduced an amendment recently that they considered to be a states' rights amendment, and Democrats considered to be an environmental amendment. So we
It's all in the framing.
picked off just enough Republicans to get to a tie vote. That's the kind of thing you can do. I think that most members of Congress look at legislation like the blind men and the elephant. They think of the bill as whatever the part is that they're touching that they can't see. And we take advantage of that. We take advantage of that through framing it so that Republicans see something good in our amendments and Democrats see something good in our amendments too, and therefore we end up with practical results that foster progressive goals.
If you go and talk to your Republican colleagues when you're trying to get these 18 members to come over and vote for an amendment you're proposing, do they look at you and say, oh, that's the guy who said our health care plan was die quickly and I saw him on MSNBC saying nasty things about us? Is there a kind of reputational gap you need to overcome?
Listen, they could call me the guy who calls them callous, bigoted tools, but the fact is that they vote their districts. They vote what they regard as in their self-interest, and every once in a while they vote for what's good for America as they see it. So if we can explain to them why something's good for their districts, why something is good for America, I have an audience.
So the big question, though, here is...
That's a good way to look at it. I mean, he can still be bombastic and talk shit, but when it comes time to get work done, he can see these people as human beings.
Okay, getting some stuff into, and some of these amendments are very interesting. No Department of Homeland Security cannot receive funds for programs that infringe on the Constitution. Seems like a sensible amendment, given that everyone's sworn to uphold it. No government contracts can be awarded to corporations convicted of fraud, which also seems like a fantastic idea. Department of Defense must submit a report on vulnerabilities in the military supply chain. My question to you is,
Skips that last one.
is there a way to transform the little model that you found on these
Elon's getting that sweet public-private partnership money for SpaceX.
kind of discrete goals into something that can, say, get the immigration bill through this House of Representatives that seems massively hostile to it?
I think so. I think that the Republicans, some of the Republicans can look at an immigration bill and they say, this is a bill that makes our borders secure. Other Republicans can look at an immigration bill and they can say to themselves, this is a bill that forces people who are not paying taxes now, not paying their fair share of taxes, to pay taxes. I think this is a winning formula for getting things done in Washington, and we badly need it. Many people now run successfully for Congress by saying that nothing can get done in Washington. I think those people personally, they shouldn't run for Congress. But in fact, the public is convinced that nothing can get done. We have to show that things can get done, and that's what we're doing by working this way and getting so many amendments passed that promote progressive goals.
Congressman Alan Grayson from Florida.
That was 10 years ago. Over 10 years ago, really. Almost 12 years ago now. So that's crazy. That's crazy. But I want to show you one more Grayson goodie before we end this this segment here. One more little Grayson goodie for you. This guy introduced a bill called the War is Making You Poor Act. I'm not even kidding about this. This is absolutely brilliant. And I hope that progressives can find some of this energy moving forward because we need it badly.
Jim is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, today I introduce H.R. 5353, the War is Making You Poor Act. The War is Making You Poor Act does three things. First, it requires the administration to carry out the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan with only, that's only, the $549 billion set forth in the President's budget for defense spending, without the additional $159 billion the President has asked for the sake of the so-called emergency war, which now stretches on to 9 years in one case and 7 years in the other.
Sounds like a fiscal conservative.
My view is that $549 billion is enough for these wars or any other wars the President plans to engage in. What this does second...
Oh, this sweet man. If only he knew how many more years these wars went on and how many more trillions were spent.
Secondly, is that it takes the money that is saved from the war separate allocation, and it uses that for a very important purpose with our economy the way it is and people in America suffering. It takes that money, or 90% of it, and it uses that to make $35,000 of everyone's income in America tax-free and $70,000 for married couples. Let's be clear about that. Let's be clear about what I said. With the money that is being saved by the Wars Making You Poor Act, we can give $35,000 of every American's income. We can make that tax-free, and $70,000 for married couples. And in addition to that, it takes the remaining money and reduces the federal deficit and the federal debt. I think those are three things, all of which need to be done. This bill brings them all together. Let's start with the fact that the administration has asked for $549 billion to basically keep the lights on at the Pentagon, and beyond that asked for another $159 billion for the wars. Let's see exactly how much that means.
So you can see why this guy isn't in Congress anymore.
On this chart here, you can see that the U.S. military spending is as much as the entire rest of the world combined. As much as the entire rest of the world combined. And in fact, the ones who come in second are our NATO allies in Europe, who I don't expect to be attacking us anytime soon. Beyond that, you have to go all the way down to China to get to any country that is conceivably ever going to be a military enemy, and we outspend China by over 5-1.
This right here is the energy that modern progressives need to have. This guy is basically trolling the military-industrial complex by writing a bill that's like, hey, you guys are spending wildly. Why don't we take some of this money and give it back to and cut people's taxes from it? And I just want to show you real quick before we end this segment, this comment from the YouTube video. Man, I love Grayson, and I consider myself a libertarian Republican. He is serious. I love him. He never lies about the numbers and gives you the money person number. And he outlines how we outspend the world in defense spending, which is, and I didn't get the rest, but this is how you do it. You bring people together, and he talked about it. The way he laid it out in that Chris Hayes clip is so brilliant. You frame these things, even though they're the same issue, you take it to the Republicans as a, hey, we're going to cut taxes. This War is Making You Poor Act is a great example. I hope that Matt Gaetz, we need to start a campaign to convince Matt Gaetz to revive the War is Making You Poor Act, because it combines two things that the current Republicans could get behind. One is, more oversight or cutting down on the spending on the Ukraine war, but also it gives Americans a tax cut. It gives families a tax cut. Imagine that if people who made $35,000 a year got that tax free, that would be amazing. It would do wonders for the economy, but it's not going to happen because, as we saw earlier, Knives Out for Alan Grayson. I'm sure that the lobbyists made sure they got rid of this guy real quick, and that's what they're going to do to anyone like Matt Gaetz who makes any kind of progress whatsoever, as small as it is, moves the ball in the direction of, cleaning things up a little bit. We are in a very strange place in the United States. And anyway, Alan Grayson, a badass MFer who we should never forget.